Hello. Come on, get yourself in. Come on, have a warm up. Oh, hey, that's been a morning, let me tell you. I'm trying to clean while Mr. Stevens is in the office writing the ledgers. And he has to be accurate or there's questions asked. And he has to chat to the lads because he needs to know everything. Problems in the family, problems in the scenes. So the lads are in and out, and Mr. Stevens is in and out all morning, and there's me supposed to clean. And when the lads come in, and Mr. Stevens come in, do they bring a sliver of silver or a nugget of gold? 'Cause there is silver and gold in the hills. Do they? They do not. They bring mud, muck, grit, dirt, sweat and curses. To think, when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a princess married to a handsome prince. But with 5 kids and hands like a farm track in winter, my chances seem limited. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed, I look at my man and think, well, he's no prince, but once I blow the candle out, he'll pass for handsome. Here's a thing. Now I'm back home, I should be putting another shift in. But young John's taken us in the cart over Lane Headway for Percy's big day, where Percy gets prepared for Mary's big day, her birthday. Now, they'll not be here just yet, so me and you will have a bit blether while I'm waiting. Now, Mary is young John's youngest, and she'll be sitting up in front of the cart aside him. Oh, poor Ben. She's been right poorly. I thought we'd lost her to the fevers. Going the same way as young John's eldest. But she'll pull through and she's canny enough now. Thanks to old Mrs. Graham. That's old Mrs. Graham, you know, just up the way. Who has knowledge of remedies. Well, she sorted my, and let me tell you, that was a do. Her remedies might look and smell foul, and the taste worse than the smell or look. But, thanks to them and Percy, Mary turned a corner. You see, Mary tells Percy all her troubles and worries, and Percy is such a good listener. The things they chat about. Well, she is coming up 12. Hey, there'll be a fair few there, 'cause there's nothing we like more than a gathering. You know what I mean, eh? We've not had anything like a gathering for 2 months or more. Mind, that was a good one. They all said it was the best funeral for a while. Lifted the spirits, if you know what I mean.
I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall...
Old Mrs. Peart, the one that lived over yonder, was a good age, and as you'll know, miserable to boot. If she'd have known her wake would be as good as it was, she'd have stayed alive just to put a stop to it. She couldn't abide people laughing and singing and chatting. She wasn't always miserable. When I was a lass, she used to love it when me and the other bairns rushed up, climbed on her lap, where she'd let us count the hairs on her chin. Then something happened. No idea what, but one day she just stopped laughing. Something always happens to chase laughter away. My father was partial to a funeral. He worked the lead until he became too old. Oh, he was a fair age when he stopped. 52 or thereabouts. And I can still picture him, sat in front of a meagre fire, poking the embers to let the smoke and his resentment fill the room. Well, by then, thanks to the black spit, he couldn't get out much, and a wedding or a funeral was something to look forward to. He much preferred a funeral, because the dancing at a wedding made him feel useless. Whereas at a funeral, everyone's slow and thoughtful, so he never felt left out. And I'll tell you this, you might not get married, you might not have kids, so you won't have a wedding or a christening, but you will have a funeral. By all accounts, my father was a champion dancer blessed. His mum used to say he'd step to the music that comes from the hills all around us. And there is music in the hills. If you listen, you can hear it on the tops as the wind whips the heather. Miners hear it deep in the hills as the tap, tap, tap at the seams. My brother Jack, he still misses that wind through the heather. I told him he would when he said he was leaving the Dales. But he said to us, I know I will, lass, but I'll not miss the candles flicker in the damp and darkness at park level, or the sound of the black spit eating my father's lungs. He left for a better world beyond the Dale. Jack, that is. Mind, I suppose when father died, he too left for a better world beyond the Dale. I'd like to think so anyway. Jack hated funerals. As he said to us, every death of a bairn takes us another step away from God. And bairns die all the time round here, so I reckon Jack is a good many miles away from God by now. But you know, I've an idea. God is still looking over Jack, keeping an eye out. I'd like to think so anyway. Hey, at one bairn's funeral, after the minister said, "The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away," Jack was heard to say, "Aye, that's what spoilt bairns do. Tease people, and spoilt bairns spoil everything." He stormed off. He never went back. Hey, we've had a letter from Jack. Just a few days ago. He's not the best at sending letters. Well, I think it's because he's busy with his new life in America and it takes time to settle into a new place. My friend Annie moved over to Nent Head some 10 years back and she's still not settled. She says people in Nent Head aren't the full load. Now, Jack lives in somewhere called Pennsylvania, wherever that is. Well, I know it's in America, but whereabouts? It's somewhere else. Still, as long as my brother knows where Pennsylvania is, he'll be fine. Hey, father wanted Jack to marry someone from round here. So what did Jack go and do? Marry someone he met in Pennsylvania. That upset Mam, because she knew then he'd never come back. But here's the thing, father was fine about it until he was told that the lass and her family came from Allendale. He was horrified that a son of his had married a foreigner. Now, I'm not one to speak out of turn, But Allendale, you'll know what I mean. No more to be said then, is there? Living hereabouts, you have your family and your neighbours as your only guarantee of getting by with some happiness. You might hate the very ground your family and neighbours walk on, but you make the best of it. I reckon I've repaired as many friendships as I've darned stockings. Same principle to both in my mind. Make do and mend because you won't get new. My man Billy still misses our Jack. Well, they were partners, working the lead together and sharing what money they made. That's my man Billy, me brother Jack, Billy John from Lane Head, and Billy John's Thomas. They did canny till a promising vein turned into a poor vein. So when it came to settling, they found themselves in debt. Now, that happens, and you make the most of it. But for our Jack, it was the end. As my father used to say, the lead is like them lasses who sink sailors to the death. They promise you so much, then smash you to pieces on the rocks. The thing is, they broke through into what looked like a canny scene, only to find it was poor workings. The old man had beaten them to it and taken all the lead. Sometimes, they say, you can still hear the old man working the seams. His tap, tap, tap deep in the earth. The whispering of his spirit caught on the hillside. Working, working to empty the hills of lead before our lads can get there. Course, we all know each other hereabouts. Can't help but when we all live close by. As you can see, each cottage is not far from another cottage. Each cottage has its own bit of land. Not much, but enough to grow vegetables and disappointment. Keep a pig, or hens, or both. The bairns love to help. Leastways, they're told they love to help. Now, just across the way, over there, lives Tommy Humble. You know Tommy. Champion runner, eh? Used to win most of the races hereabouts. But here's the thing. Do you know who lives next door to him? Stumpy Peart. Right. He was a canny runner and all. Winning those races, Tommy didn't win. Till he lost his leg, when that truck crushed his foot. Hey, great rivals were Tommy and Stumpy. Now they've joined forces. With Tommy's 2 legs and Stumpy's 1 leg, they win all the 3-legged races in the Dale. Stumpy's got 9 children, 8 born since he lost his leg. So it seems, when he couldn't run anymore, he turned his energies to other things, if you get me drift. Now, a lot of people round here are called Jane Peart. It's 'cause we like to keep things simple. And it saves your memory from important stuff like remembering grudges and who owes you money. So, If a stranger comes up here asking for Jane Peart, well, he could be directed to any of a score of cottages. You can see how many cottages there are. So, there can be a good few hours tramping from one cottage to the other, looking for the Jane Peart they want. Of course, we may well know the Jane Peart in question, but watching them wandering hither and thither and up and down keeps us entertained for hours. And if the Jane Peart they want has emigrated, that's even better. Still, before they set off for the tramp back home, they'll be given a slice of bread and cheese and a glass of parsnip wine or the like. Only fair. Entertainment must be paid for. We'd never see anyone go hungry. Know how that feels only too well. Truth to tell, we're all related in some way. Understandable when you think on, because you can't go far, because up here is the back of beyond. More leave the place these days than settle. Mind, there are some who see no need to be anywhere but here. I'd love to have seen the world, but it's not a woman's place, is it? And when you think about it, who'd look after the lads if us women weren't here? If we didn't do that, the Dale would fall a ruin. I don't complain. Let the men think they run everything, then leave us women to put things right. It's been a canny day today, hasn't it? But you know what? Winters in the Dale can be fierce. But on a dark winter's night, when freezing wind screams down the Dale, there's nothing better than the whole family gathered round a good fire. Stomachs full of good broth, bairns playing, then lulled to sleep by the gossip of grown-ups with their news of the day, and them stories all grown-ups have, the ones that need to be told again and again. And the long summer evenings, not always warm, but full of warmth. Bairns chasing through fields, plodging in the river, then helping with the hay. And us women sat outside the cottage door, preparing and peeling the tatties, making and mending, watching the world spinning round. I feel for the lads when they tramp from that daylight into that darkness. My Joshua, same age as our Mary, and he'll be there for Percy's day. I watch him playing with sticks, building dens, and I think, aye, make the most of it, lad, 'cause the days of damp and darkness are waiting. Should I tell him? Prepare him like? I think he knows full well. At park level, he'll lose sight of the stars. Them that glitter and shoot on a clear night, that hypnotise you and make you see how small you are, yet give you them dreams that make life worth living. Stars don't glitter underground, do they? So I can see why our Jack left for America. I remember him and my father sitting, drinking and smoking, and Jack said to father, "Have you never wanted to have seen the world?" And father said, "Oh, aye, I've seen a bit of the world, Jack, when I were a lad. Went to Bishop Auckland once. Wasn't impressed." And that was that. But you know, I like living here. Puddingthorne. And it's not far from Killhope, Maine. Oh, hey. But it's long enough on a winter's day. Oh, when it's still dark and that cold settles in your bones. Then you get that lazy wind. You know the one. Goes through you, not round you. And when that wind partners with a cold and driving rain, hailstones as sharp as pins, or snow as blind and silent as death itself, you long for your own hearth. Failing that, the fires of hell will do very nicely. Hey, this letter from our Jack, and he has got beautiful handwriting. Copper plate, they call it. All thanks to his diligence and the teacher's cane. Mind, it was beautiful handwriting that did for Grandma Peart at Cornriggs. Jack was a good scholar, but he often wondered why he bothered. 'Cause all he could see from the school window was the lead mine, and owners aren't that interested in your knowledge of kings and queens and the names of capital cities. But it has stood Jack in good stead since he left for America. A well-formed letter and a well-made sentence create a good impression. The news nigh on broke me heart, you know, when he said he was leaving for America. But I wouldn't let on. He wasn't the first and he wasn't the last. And given what I've heard some of the lads say about the seams, there'll be more leaving sooner rather than later. That day, me mum cried so bad. She didn't want him to go. And what's more, she didn't want him to go with Tommy from Stanhope. Mum kept wailing, "Why go with someone from Stanhope? Why go with someone from Stanhope?" You see, she'd never trusted people from Stanhope with their fancy ways. Now, it's at the shop and the chapel after the sermonising's done that we get all the news and gossip. Then it's scurry back home to write the poison pen letters. Now, remember me saying about Grandma Peart from Cornriggs? She was the best. She had a vicious turn of phrase, much admired. But with her beautiful handwriting, everyone knew it was her writing the letters. She was a nasty piece of work. She hadn't always been, you know. When she was 18, they say she was as beautiful as a meadow in springtime, with a temper as sweet as honey. Then she married John Peart from Lane Head. That's the youngest lad of Tom Peart. You know, the elder brother of John Peart the blacksmith. Now, if she was a summer day at haymaking, he was a February day, all bitterness and bleak. He could read and he could write and he was very good at numbers, but he was blighted by the affliction of wanting to be something other than a lead miner. The cane had shaped my brother's copper-plate hand, and the cane tempered John Peart's ambition. Being too clever by half finds poor lodgings round here. Never think you're more than what you are, 'cause you know more than what other people say you are. Hey, you could feel John Peart's anger and frustration 100 yards away. He'd fight anyone and anything without a second thought. And he practised his fisticuffs on his wife and bairns. She didn't complain, 'cause other women had the same. And some women braid the husbands, so perhaps things have a way of evening out. But it's what happened to her grandson, Tom, a washer boy. All my lads started off as washer boys. I'd watch them come in with their chapped hands, soaked through and shivering. There was nought I could do. Nought they wanted us to do either, 'cause they were on the way to being men. It starts with the fevers and shivers of the washer boys and ends with the black spit of the lead miners. But Grandma Peart's grandson didn't make it to the black spit. Pneumonia came first. If you're not taken by one thing, you're taken by another. Death has a way of pleasing itself. Now, Grandma Peart lived in the next cottage to Nancy Peart. That's Nancy Peart that was, before she married Harrison Peart. Hey, I used to envy Nancy, 'cause she could shake a canny pan with whatever was in the larder. Some days there wouldn't be much, but she could turn whatever there was into a meal for the family and whoever dropped by. My lad reckons it was Nancy that showed Jesus how to make those few loaves and fishes stretch to feed all those people. And she never had a mucky step, no matter what time of the day or season of the year. That counts for a lot hereabouts. Now, Grandma Peart and Nancy Peart couldn't abide each other. They only spoke to complain. And if by chance they found themselves standing next to each other, the silence of them turning their backs on each other could be heard in Teesdale. But when the news that day came about the grandson, such was the commotion that came from Grandma Peart's cottage, Nancy Peart went next door to complain. And when the door opened and Nancy saw Grandma, red-eyed and staring at silence, Nancy walked past her to put kettle on to boil. Then she went back home, returning a few minutes later when water was reaching the boil with a small bottle of brandy hidden in her apron pocket, like this one. Now, Grandma Peart, being a member of the Primitive Methodist Society, was strictly teetotal, so Nancy had to pour the brandy into the tea without a noticing. You see, Nancy, being Church of England, knew that although God was a wonderful comfort in the long term, after sudden and unexpected death or distressing news of any sort, brandy was the Good Samaritan, helping you out with no questions asked. I worship at St Andrew's in Cows Hill. I've never taken to Methodism. It's all a bit holier than thou, if you get me drift. But it's very popular hereabouts. As my father used to say, that John Wesley fella brought Methodism to the Dale, and when he left, he took pleasure with him. Besides, the church at Cows Hill, it's a shorter walk than that chapel at Weirhead. Purely medicinal. Now, where was I? Oh yes, now. Grandma Peart and Nancy Peart. Now remember, these two women couldn't abide each other. Yet there they sat that day, drinking tea, wrapped in memory and thought. And when others turned into the cottage, Nancy left, going back home, and she prayed for them all. At the funeral of one too young to die, the sun shone. It's all wrong, that. If people hadn't been wearing black, you might have thought it was the chapel picnic. Then, after the body that was killed by the Hills was put back into the Hills, Grandma Peart turned to Nancy Peart and said, I thank you, lass, for your Christian concern, but don't let it go to your head. You're still a witch. That's as may be, Grandma Peart, said Nancy, and I thank you for teaching me so well. God bless. And with that, the lives returned to normal, much to the relief of everyone. It's lovely to hear from our Jack. He's doing canny. No regrets about leaving. He misses us. And yes, he does miss that wind chasing through the heather. But there's no going back. What's done is done. He didn't take a spar box with him to America. He left it behind to remind us of him. Lovely thought that, but we remember him because he's worth remembering. Still got me father's spar box. It's beautiful. It glows with all the colours in the world, and some that only heaven allows. Us bairns would gather round. He'd open it up, and all the little bits of rock would glitter and glow. Then the stories would begin. Stories of magical worlds, of islands and distant oceans, of faraway stars and the people who lived on them. Of a knight of old trying to rescue a beautiful princess from a fearsome dragon. When Father told that story, I was the princess. When Jack told it, I was the dragon. Not long before he died, Father took his spar box, he opened it up, and he said, "Can you believe such beauty can be trapped underground? It looks like heaven." Joshua asked, "Granda, is heaven deep in the earth then?" "I don't know, lad, but if it is, I haven't found it. But I'm hoping I will find heaven when the time is right." How will you know when the time is right? Like I always find out about things. Your grandma will tell us. Here they are, at last. Oh, oh no. And there's our Mary, sat aside her dad. Oh, doesn't she look bonny with those ribbons in her curls? She said she'd make an effort for Percy's day. Oh, we'll drive up to Lane Head and she'll talk and talk and talk until we get there. Then, when everyone's gathered round, Percy will be brought out. Oh, he'll wonder what all the fuss is about. Then, young John will take his hammer and stun him. Oh, and we'll lift him up by the hind legs, slit his throat, and I'll collect blood in bucket to make a good black pudding. Of course Mary will be upset, but she'll have a smile on her face when she bites into a pig's trotter. And Percy will be happy, knowing he's brought such pleasure to his Mary. Anyway, before I go, I best go up the netty. It's the jiggling of that cart. Soon sets me off, eh? There's enough room for two in there if you're desperate. Oh.